Well, guys, we are back for another episode of the Liberal Asshole Show, episode 73. And what are today's topics? Because there's a lot of them.
There is Anna Kasparian going TERF, bank collapse 2.0, major Israeli protests, democracy defeats fascism in Wisconsin, Pokemon TCG player kicked from tournament over pronouns, school shooting in Tennessee, Finland joins NATO as Putler molds, and Trump indicted.
Putler! And boy is he maulded. Alright, so what do you want to talk about first?
Well, let's start with the one that came up literally the day after Liberal our last episode, and that was when Anna Kasparian decided she'd start going down the path to being a TERF.
Yeah, oh boy, that was a wild one. So Anna Kasparian, who's from TYT, we've talked about her. Pretty sure it was some time ago because she did something else, and of course she did a really pretty dumb tweet recently, and everyone and their mother mocked her for it too, and she deserved it. And now let's go watch Vosh's take on it, because boy was it pretty bad.
The reason these terms are used in the I'm a woman, please
the fact when we have to when Vosh is the more reasonable one, you know you done good. And a why, just why.
I'm a woman. Please don't ever refer to me as a person with a uterus, birthing person, or person who menstruates. How do people not realize how degrading this is? You can support the transgender community without doing this shit. 18 million views, 100,000 likes, comments absolutely packed full of Parker Mully, apparently. I don't know why Twitter is just
up a little bit
to the top. Anna arguing with people, and a bunch of conservatives going like, wow, you're based, actually. There's Carrie Lake. Admittedly, Anna Kasparian is trying to beat them off the stick, but still. I can't believe she left this. Well, I guess, like, deleting it would have mean that she kowtowed to the woke mob, which would have contributed to its own conservative.
So for all of you that don't know what she's complaining about, she's criticizing the people that use terms like birthing people and stuff like that as, like, people are not fully biologically women, but are women socially and all that. And she had a meltdown over it, implying, like, people say that to her and stuff like that, which, unlike a lot of people that, like, make fun of her saying that, I wouldn't necessarily deny that people do call that. People have called me stuff, like, trans stuff all the time for, like, really no reason whatsoever, so I could see it happen, but it's not as big of a deal as she's making out to be. She's going off.
Agenda. This is really dumb, okay? Listen, far be it from me to speak over a woman, which I hate to do. I hate speaking over women. As a man.
Women are not special. They don't get a privilege of not being talked over.
Don't go Tumblr in poll on that.
You're not being referred to person with a uterus, birthing person, or person who menstruates. In fact, I'd go so far as to say that I don't think Anna Kasparian has ever been referred to that way.
I don't know about that one, boss.
Descriptors.
She probably has at some point.
Yeah, like, a lot of this stuff does happen. Like, don't deny it. Like, I've even had this stuff told to me from, like, the male perspective.
Is never being pointed at and going, person with a uterus. Everybody says woman. The term woman has not gone anywhere. Even the wokest like the wokest Tumblr, TikTok blue hairs are not, like, seeing a woman on the street and going like, oh yeah, that person with the uterus. You know why? Because that's the opposite of the point. The reason these terms are used in the context they're used is because they're broad descriptors for people who are not entirely women in the group category. Like, for instance, okay, when people have beards, it's almost always men. Almost always when somebody has a beard, that person is a man. But even leaving aside trans people, there are literally cisgender women who can grow beards. I mean, if you want to go down to, like, wispy mustache hairs, then that's basically everybody, okay? Not exactly an uncommon thing if you go down, you know, if you lower the bar far enough, okay? Now, if you wanted to say, like, this razor is for people with facial hair, you wouldn't be erasing men as a category. All you'd be doing is, like, in the interest of inclusivity, correctly acknowledging the fact that it's not just men who have beards. And likewise, over here, the people who say person with a uterus, birthing person, or person who menstruates are doing so in the context of legislation and medicine which refers to birth, uteruses, and menstruation, a category of people which is not entirely women. Like, this is
Exactly,
this
like
is
trans
idiotic.
men who haven't
Nobody
transitioned
is going
yet.
up to Anna Kasparian
Yeah.
and going, yes, birthing person. And if she's offended by the use of the term birthing person or person with a uterus to describe people who give birth or have uteruses, then, like, what is this Karen shit? Unironically, like, really, Karen shit. This is a certified white woman moment. This is like this is not. Nobody is going up to her and saying this.
I should mention at that point, Borsch, she's not technically considered white by everyone. I know she's white by you, but remember, she's part Armenian, and so a lot of people. So there are people who do not consider her white because of her part Armenianness.
Or if you're Turk, not even probably human.
In an era of virtually unprecedented.
Yes.
Because he actually did come around on the Armenian genocide in 2017. At the latest, September 2017.
I think Bosch even mentioned that later on in the video.
Side of the bed. Let's make this about me bullshit. I've seen from like somebody who claims to be a progressive in a long time. And again, it doesn't immediately like knock out or invalidate everything she's ever done or said that I think is good. Of course not. But like, it's really dumb. This is really, really dumb. Yeah, I saw her arguing with the Humanist Report. Hold on. My man. How you doing? See, we're oomphies. Bosch, you're being kind of mean. No, I'm not. The Humanist Report says, I respect you. Yeah, Mike. I respect you a lot, but this notion that the mere existence of trans-inclusive terms, rarely used in casual convos, somehow degrades women comes right out of the right's anti-trans war on women playbook. There's a reason why they're praising you for this. And then Anna, retardedly, says, hey, Mike, you're a guy who has no clue what it's like to have your reproductive freedom taken away. So we can break this down like sentence by sentence, okay? People who use the term birthing person and person with a uterus will never try to take away Anna Kasparian's reproductive freedom. That is the opposite side of the
really
aisle.
weird to bring that up.
No reproductive or sex-based rights are being taken away from the kinds of people who use trans-inclusive terms. Zero, none, nil, nada. You know, people earlier were saying this kind of aligned with TERF rhetoric, but her immediately responding to Mike with, you're a man, so you don't know what it's like. Honest to God, kind of does resonate in that way. But consider what it's like to have the same lawmakers who fail to protect our rights turn around and call us people with uteruses.
But the people that call you that are not the ones that would take away abortion rights.
Wait,
exactly.
The same lawmakers.
The people that would use those terms are the ones that are going to be on your side.
Failed to protect our rights.
What the hell?
Oh, so you mean the lawmakers who defended your rights, but there weren't enough? Wait, who? Roe v. Wade was taken away by the Supreme Court. That was a Supreme Court decision. Do you mean like state legislators for all the people who are going after like 6-week abortion bans? If that's the case, why are you directing your ire at the people who attempted to protect your rights but were outnumbered? Do you think that like the reason why reproductive rights are being rolled back across the country is because there are woke blue-haired state senators who are using terms like birthing person and menstruating person, but who
there isn't even that either.
Enough. Like they didn't.
No, not even that either.
Vote. They didn't like deploy their like
There's no
maximum
woke scolds really in politics in America.
Kamehameha vote. Like what do you mean? This is idiotic. I think she means Congress never passed a law making it right. This is like the essence of I have no point but I must scream right here. It's
like
so
a good old
frustrating
Karen, Anna.
To see the people who voted to defend my rights use terms that are inclusive to trans people who I ostensibly politically support. What? It's not inclusive if cis women hate it. Hey, guys, desegregation is not inclusive.
We're actually going to get into this a little bit later. I mean, because we're going to be talking about this a little bit later on, but yeah, I'm sure a lot of cis women probably would not like being called people with uteruses, birthing women, because they're the people that would already be able to do all that, so it would be kind of weird to call them that. But those terms are there for people who are not fully women who can still do that. Like, there are women who are trans men that haven't transitioned yet, so they can still have periods, they can still get pregnant, but when they transition they no longer can, whereas you still can. Like that's what it's there for. See, yeah, I'm sure you would find it annoying, but I don't think they would hate it. And it's not that big of a deal
If white
to
people
go
hate
full
it.
turf on us.
This is like straightforwardly reactionary right here. This is a reactionary talking point, okay? First of all, again, cis women are not being rolled up to and directly referred to as menstruating person. Like, look,
don't know about that one,
I go
Bosch.
back one level in the thread or whatever, and she responds to somebody. Oh, 2 levels in the thread, sorry. And she responds to somebody, and it's like, I think somebody asked her, like, where are you even hearing these terms being used? And the answer she had was like, oh yeah, there are some like medical texts and like some lawmakers. Well, don't you think
text,
inclusive
that's
language
expected. It's not
has
that big
a
a
role
deal.
in medicine and lawmaking? Like, is that like that seems like a good time? Go back to the thread. It wasn't that thread. Okay, that seems like a good time to do those things. Oh yeah, here we go.
Probably
It's used by
when it comes to the medical stuff, that'd probably be the only time.
many major institutions, the ACLU, the CDC, universities and news agencies, and prominent progressive figures like AOC, and the guilt by association charges lazy and lame. This is like so dumb. Like we are in the context in which they are being used, they're being talked about to describe broad groups of people in the context of medicine and legislation.
Yeah, that
this
makes
is
perfect
not
sense
about
for
like
ACLU,
erasing women as a
CDC,
term at all.
universities
And
and
again,
stuff
I
to
stand
bring
by
it
my
up.
comparison, by the way. The idea that
Exactly.
something isn't inclusive because the dominant power group in a context hate it, and that would be cis women in this case, because the term people with uteruses is meant to include cis women and like trans men and non-binary people, and of those 3 people, cis women have by far the most social power. The idea that it's not inclusive if the dominant group hates it, like that's really dumb, you know? Exactly the same as like, oh well, how can you possibly say that racial integration is inclusive if actually the whites hate it or whatever. I hate the implication that the discomfort of trans men and non-binary people being lumped in with women is less important than cis women being referred to as terms that are more technically correct in appropriate context. Yeah, first of all, I'm not making any personal assumptions about Anna's like health here or whatever, but as I understand it, the term person with uterus objectively describes Anna. So we're not even talking like the ambiguity of social categorization here. This is literally just referring to people with uteruses. It's not like it, like again, this would literally be, this is like saying instead of saying men, you're saying people over 6 foot. Men are over 6 foot. Well, not all men are over 6 foot, and also there are people who are men who are over 6 foot. Why are you erasing men? Like tall people. Why not tall men? Like it's stupid. It doesn't mean anything. It's a fake problem. It's Karen shit. It's white woman. It's the white woman problems. Didn't have enough brunch mimosas. I have no idea. It's just very disappointing because I have a generally high opinion of Anna Kasparian's intelligence, and I have no idea where this is coming from. I say what I think as an independent person with an independent mind. I don't care what the right or left thinks. Oh my god. And I've made myself clear on being against any policy that harms the trans community. But maybe respect my personal boundaries too? Is that okay? My personal boundaries of being included in a group that you're objectively in by a descriptor that you objectively meet. Nobody's calling Anna Kasparian any of these terms directly. So how does this refer
I don't know about that,
any
boss.
way
There
to
are
her
a lot of
personal
dumb people online.
Do your personal
Yeah,
boundaries?
they're probably what's his face? What their faces?
I wouldn't be surprised if she was called this, and that's what caused her meltdown.
That's probably what triggered it. Honestly,
Extend to broad
because some random
categorizations that
idiot
aren't
decided
even being
to call her that, and she's just going off
full
and
turf.
decided and headed to say, you know what? I'm going to start acting like a
used
freaking
in your
turf.
presence? Like, could I be offended because somebody said, like, people with glasses? And I'm like, well, I'm not just defined by my glasses. That's offensive. And then people turn to me and they're like, what the f*** are you talking about? What the f*** are you talking about? I'm like looking at like a website or something or a commercial. And they're like, people with leg hair. I'm not defined by my leg hair. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? What? Why? No one was talking to you. Like, really, though? Like, this feels like people who say cis is a slur. Yeah, it really does. It really, doesn't it? It really does feel like, it really does, you know, she's like, you know, I support trans people, but don't call me cis. Oh, hey, and look what kind of people.
What?
I mean, you
The
are
comments
cis, though,
are full
Anna.
of conservatives who are like
Yeah.
Well,
frothing in their
most
mouth.
likely, because I don't know about your
Jank had a
personal
retarded tweet
life.
defending her and attacking AOC for no reason. Are people really pretending that people who menstruate is a term only used in clinical settings? AOC uses it and she doesn't appear to be a doctor. AOC is using it in the context of laws that refer to processes specifically dealing with people with uteruses or this, that, the other. These aren't being used in interpersonal conversations. It's not just about clinical settings. If we all have agreement that's not what you should call a woman in non-clinical settings, great deal, let America rejoice. Nobody's doing this! Okay. I know that Jenk is just defending Anna here because they're part of the same network. But, like, I don't know, man. This is really...
Plus, I've noticed this for a while now. Haven't you noticed that TYT's pretty much going more and more right-wing?
Yeah.
Like, do you remember...
Like, that's what I've noticed. That,
do you remember Chank's saga, like, last year when he voted for a Republican for mayor in Los Angeles?
Yep.
Because they're so pro-cop?
Yep.
What the
yes,
fuck,
there's also, yeah, now we've got Anna Kasparian going down the TERF route.
I actually
seemed like Kyle was one of the only things stopping them from going back to their ancient, to their old terrible roots.
Less than the shoe on head Balenciaga shit, because like shoe on head has always had like a default bias towards like dumb populism, and I know that, and I've always known that. So when I wake up in the morning and people are mad because she did it again, it's like, okay. But like Anna Kasparian, is generally pretty rigorous when it comes to the stuff that she says and does. I don't agree with everything she says, of course, but you know, like I don't think of Anna Kasparian as a YouTuber. You know, I think of her as like a political pundit. This is just a really embarrassing lack of I don't know, self-awareness of political expediency. So because she's consistently worse, it's better, Vosh. Weird measure of perspective. Yeah, actually, if there's a quirk that's demonstrated by like an over-the-top political or like culture YouTuber who just like does their own thing and is very like upfront, like hard on their sleeve, yeah, I actually do think if they do something dumb, I think that's a lot less bad than somebody who carries themselves with an enormous amount of professionalism, who like literally gets debates with Ben Shapiro and the upper echelons of like a conservative intelligentsia, just randomly dropping some zero IQ TERF bullshit with no apparent connection to any previous ideology. Yeah, I do think that's a lot worse. Yes, I don't get it at all. Yeah, what is it with the Young Turks, man? At the end of the day, I don't think
going right wing,
whatever. I've seen a bunch of people.
Both of them are retreating to their old
That's the
old
problem.
piece
Like
of shit
this is
thing.
like classic white woman syndrome, right? Where like everyone's progressive about race issues till their daughter brings home a black guy. I don't know if this is Anna Kasparian just being like nominally pro-trans until suddenly something gets up her, like the chip lands on her shoulder, and all of a sudden it's like you know, it's like, here's my personal crusade. I don't know, like, or maybe she just woke up on the wrong side of the bed this day, in which case, embarrassing. But like, yeah, I have no idea. I don't know. People with uteruses unironically saying trans women are men. What? Trans women don't have uteruses generally. I'm sure in this wacky world of ours there's at least one exception, but to my knowledge that's generally something.
I mean, men who haven't transitioned yet.
Though we're
women
getting there, you know,
who haven't transitioned yet would.
A thing pretty soon. So
Exactly.
We'll, you know, another Jenk L. She isn't going to learn from this and will just bring you further down, as is often the case. This kind of patronizing attitude makes people loathe far left extremists. Far left extremists? From this? Who the f*** are you to say Anna should learn what to say? Okay. Here is a man explaining to a woman what she should call herself. This mansplainer probably pretends to be a progressive. Okay, I do think that Jenk is only saying shit to defend Anna here. I think Jenk is in
That's
like
full
SJW
panic
level
level shit there, Jenk. Mansplaining.
I don't think this is actually a representation of his beliefs. He's always done. Yeah, he's loyal. He's ride or die, man. 100%. There are a bunch of shitty liberals on Vosh V pretending to speak for you or backing her up. Oh, don't worry, guys. Okay, let me do the denunciation, okay? If you post to my subreddit, Vosh V, I hate you, and you're a liberal, and you will not see the kingdom of heaven, you will never feel the loving embrace of God, and you have no bitches.
Like, what the hell, Anna?
Zero
Come
bitches.
on.
You will never get a bitch.
Yeah,
Even if you leave the
exactly.
subreddit, you won't. Got it. There we go. Denunciation complete. Nailed it. Liz, I have zero problems with inclusion, none, but there's got to be a better way than boiling it down to a body part, no? No! In the context of talking about, say, like, reproductive rights, people with uteruses is the most objectively correct, like, categorization you could possibly make when you're talking about, like, abortion. Like, that's literally that's the most, especially in the context of having reproductive rights taken away from people just seeing women as a baby-making vessel. That's all I'm saying. Is the argument here that using the term person with a uterus to describe uterus-related activities reduces women down to their biological functions? Wouldn't exclusively saying women when referring in fact to people with uteruses not only be less inclusive, but also further reduce women down to that role?
But
women should care about this. Women's right, women this, women that. Well, in that case, you are just saying women equals person with uterus. You're the one reducing them down to a baby-making vessel. Whereas if you say person with uterus, you can, like, Anna, you can just be like, yeah, well, people with uteruses, I've also got, like, an arm. I've got glasses. I have glasses. You don't have, I don't think you have glasses. Hair, people with hair. Why don't you just call me a woman? No, it's like, well, you have hair. Hi, Anna. No one is asking you to call yourself or called anything other than a woman. No one. Biden admin replaces mothers with birthing people in maternal health guidance. Wow. Probably because the maternal health guidance is a guideline specifically for people giving birth. Well, oh, wow.
I bet it doesn't replace mothers entirely here.
12K likes, by the way. Like this, it's a further representation of the stupendous retardation of the conservative mind, which, by the way, Anna is completely backing up here. Anna agrees with this. This isn't just conservatives. Yeah. Anna agrees. He's making her point. She was bitching about lawmakers using it. That's the exact same context that this person is using it. Literally, no one is asking you to call yourself or be called anything other than a woman. No one, huh? Well, here's an ad I found that refers to people with Costco memberships, Costco membership havers. Anna, do you have a Costco membership? How do you feel about women being reduced down to their Costco saving function? How do you feel about your whole identity being boiled down to your box smart bulk buy membership status? Like literally, I'm not even exaggerating. It's the same thing. Anna rightly objects to being referred to as a person with a uterus. Why? She has one.
And of course, good old Matt Walsh.
If she doesn't have one, I don't know why she's even, because then she's literally not even in the. What?
Yep.
Anna doesn't like the fact that there's people with feet. I'm not just my feet. I have ankles. I can't. She still uses the term cis woman, which is simply a shorter way of saying the same thing. These people are... Funnily enough, Matt is correct. It is internally contradictory to get angry over person with a uterus as a blanket term, but also use the term cis women. He's right. Did. These contradict each other.
The fact, Anna, that you made Matt Walsh actually correct on something against you.
That is so fucking WTF.
Don't have uteruses. Unless the correlate
Anna.
who are people with uteruses who aren't women. Therefore, there is a contradiction between... Oh my god. Dude, her point was so dumb that Matt Walsh pointed it out. Oh my god.
How do you let Matt Walsh be right on you for once? Come on.
Oh, wow, that actually hurts. That's like psychic damage right there.
Wow.
Losing to Matt. Why can't every
person with a uterus
left-leaning
cis woman,
just
that's
be me?
fake.
Just like a series of clones.
Even though it's the same
You
thing.
just go on YouTube, and you have like the far right or whatever, and then you just have a bunch of people in Hawaiian shirts with coffee cups.
That is
who are explaining why they didn't stream the past 3 days and calling each other retards. If only.
Yeah, that was just absolutely insane. So, what do you guys say about that? Anna, what is wrong with you? Come on.
Yeah. Why the hell are you going down this fucking TERF route? Jeez. I used to really like you, and then this started happening.
Anna, and TYT2 and Chink, you all gotta fix yourselves. You haven't been good the last few years. Now you're going all right wing with Chink having his pro cop meltdown last year. Now Anna doing this. Like what's next? Other than you two arguing about being civil to conservatives the other day. Remember that huge debate they had?
Oh, I remember that. Yes. Oh God.
You guys really need to fix your shit. You're not the same as you were back in the early 2010s when you were awesome. All right. So now on to the next topic. Actually, you know what? I have a better idea. Since I've mentioned earlier how about we get to the Pokemon thing, since it involves
True.
trans rights too. So anyways, so recently, find out this is actually the second time in a month something LGBT rights related to Pokemon tournaments happened. If you didn't know, back in the beginning of March, a judge at a Pokemon competitive tournament actually got banned for life for harassing trans women.
Wow.
I was actually thinking about bringing that up, but I didn't do it. That happened a month ago. It was pretty funny. Like, literally even this judge actually went and bugged them when they went to a dinner that he wasn't even invited to, for crying out loud.
Wow.
So much for the Pokemon community being completely progressive, am I right?
Yeah.
Alright, well, with that out of the way, this just happened recently because Dylan Burns covered it. I don't think I posted... Yeah, I didn't post the video on it because it was too long. But anyways, recently, there was a Pokemon TCG tournament that happened, and I can't remember who this was, but it was some, like, 16-year-old who think it was in the Carolinas, but whatever it was, they flew out there. It cost hundreds of dollars to go there, and they had to miss school too because of it, to do this TCG thing. And before the tournament, the judge asked him his pronouns. Now, of course, the kid, obviously a man, and probably never, ever, ever been asked that before, was all, like, confused and all that, like, if you get what I'm saying, like, was not able to respond coherently and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't remember exactly what the rest happened because it was like a few days ago or whatever what happened. But eventually, when they were doing the match, the match was immediately canceled in the middle of the game, and the kid was suspended from the tournament. Because of freaking pronouns. Because he didn't give his pronouns and such. Thankfully, the kid was able to do a fundraiser to help redeem all the money he wasted to head back home and all that, and hopefully get back to the tournament. But this is a reverse shit of what we're talking about. Like, oh my god. Like, remember we were just talking about Anna having a meltdown over the TERF, the language stuff. I'm sure she was called that by someone, and that's what caused her meltdown. What people in the LGBT community need to realize is, you guys still are the minority. Most people are cis. Most people don't do the pronoun stuff. So most people, if you ask what their pronouns are, most likely they're gonna be like confused and belittled, befuddled and all that. And at least in my experience, because I've had this happen to me before, like online stuff, it's honestly very annoying when people ask me for my pronouns. It's very overwhelmingly obvious what gender I am. You don't need to ask, so don't fucking ask. Have you ever been asked that before?
No, honest, probably 1 or 2 times.
And what did you think? Did it, like, annoy you because it was, like, so obvious?
It was weird.
Yeah.
It was weird. I was like,
Like, I'm telling you all, in the LGBT community, most people, like, your guys, a lot of you times, are in a bubble. Most people are gonna not be, like, really confused if you ask them that, especially out of nowhere, like at a freaking Pokemon tournament. So maybe, just maybe, don't, like, ask the question literally every single time. It's being ridiculous. And then you get to the point where, oh, you didn't do the pronouns correctly and all that. We're gonna kick you out from the tournament. Fuck those judges. I hope they get kicked, just like that transphobic judge last month did. Absolutely pathetic. So what do you guys say about this?
Oh, this is bad. This is just...
This is what I would call actual woke. So woke that you have to literally ask every single person their pronouns, even when most people don't understand it and don't give a shit about it. Just stop. Just stop. Maybe this might be a dick move possibly in your eyes, but maybe, just maybe, assume who they are, and if you're incorrect and they tell you who they actually are, you correct yourself then, instead of looking like an idiot and going full Karen when cis people don't want to, or act weird when you ask for their pronouns, because they aren't asked that often. You look silly to them. And God, I had to deal with a whole bunch of people in Dylan Burns' comment section about it because they were just being like really, really, really stupid about it.
Yeah.
So yeah, fuck those judges, and I hope this is the last thing related to judges and trans rights in Pokemon community I haven't here in a while. Like, God, the fact that happened earlier back in March, now another one here. Like, can it just stop?
Yeah.
It's pretty bad. I mean, Pokemon is supposed to be like the most progressive fandom probably in the entire world, to the point where we even have like actual woke scolds. Which this one actually doesn't surprise. This one doesn't surprise me. The transphobic judge one, though, that did surprise me. All right, so now I think it's on to the next topic,
Which will be Bank Collapse 2.0.
So yeah, this is another thing. Oh no, this happened before the last episode, and I was thinking about covering it, but we never did, because I think I even mentioned too I'd make it a topic. So here it is. So recently, there was some banks in Silicon Valley, so like Southern California and all them, collapsed recently, and of course, the American government bailed them out. To no surprise, gee, bail out banks? No problem. Bail out people are suffering? No, because the banks bought us off and all that. So yeah, absolutely pathetic. And then of course, bringing up wokeness again, the right blamed wokeness for it. Ah!
Of course.
So we had SVB,
Silicon
Silicon Valley Bank.
So yeah, let's watch Kyle make fun of these
So we had
idiots.
SVB, Silicon Valley Bank, go under. We went into all the reasons as to why that is in the previous segment. Definitely go check that out.
Oh, I was hoping it was going to be in
But
this one. I was
basically,
looking for the video.
The bank of the venture capitalists and the bank of the tech world. And they were too invested in bonds, and as interest rates went up, their investments became effectively worthless. And then also, as interest rates went up, the startups wanted to pull out their money because they needed cash to like make payroll, and the game was up because, you know, if you're losing money on because you're invested in bonds and the interest rates are going up, which means, you know, your long-term money's going down, and they're starting to pull out money, the startups are pulling out money because they need it, well, that doesn't add up, and then eventually you're in trouble, and that's exactly what happened. They ended up going under. The FDIC took them over, then the Fed stepped in. We're going to bail them out. Anyway, you guys know the story. A major piece of this is, number one, not being diversified was a huge problem for this bank. But number two, the deregulation that they themselves lobbied for is a big part of the problem. Okay, well...
maybe that's why banks should be regulated severely so stuff like this doesn't happen.
Exactly.
Government regulations for the win? Why am I not surprised?
The Idiot Brigade, to give their Idiot Brigade reasons as to why they think the bank went under. Let's start with James Comer of Kentucky.
And then we see now coming out that they were one of the most woke banks in their
Here we go again. Everything bad is woke.
Type policy and investing. You know, this could be a trend, and there are consequences for bad Democrat policy. And I think we need to keep an eye on all the
who's the one that really supports bank deregulation?
Blaming it
Conservatives.
on wokeness.
Yep.
He's blaming the bank failure on wokeness. If you don't believe me, this is now a talking point that they're all going with. Ron DeSantis came out and said, the reason this went under is diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Everything
and then
is
you have, throw this up on screen there. This is Donald Trump Jr. who chimes in and says, SVB is what happens when you push a leftist/woke ideology and have that take precedent over common sense business practices.
Common sense business practice is exactly what they did, you idiot.
Exactly.
Gee, I see you in
fact,
here.
They actually think that.
I see the stupidity runs very well in the Trump family.
The last failure of this nature, so long as people are rewarded for pushing this BS. He blamed leftist and woke ideology. No, Donald Trump Jr., quite explicitly, leftist policy would have saved the bank. Why do I say that?
More diversity.
The regulation is leftist.
Man, that's
So we used to have Glass-Steagall regulations on the banking sector, and that was taken away by Bill Clinton.
I'm not Ted Cruz.
And we had the Wild Wild West deregulatory scene. And then what happened? 2008, subprime mortgage crisis, Great Recession, in part due to the lack of the regulation. And then we had Dodd-Frank. Now, Dodd-Frank is weak. It wasn't as good as Glass-Steagall was, but it was something. Well, guess what? In 2018, your dad signed a repeal of the regulation that would have helped prevent this exact crisis. Because
but
guess what? They
Daddy's
said,
smart.
hey, if you're a
And he
bank
tells me I'm
that
smart
has
every day.
100 billion in assets, you're not technically a big bank. So you don't need the stringent regulations that the ones that have 250 billion and more get. Under Dodd-Frank, they said if you're a bank 50 billion and up, you get stress tests, you get the stringent regulation. And then in 2018, Donald Trump and the Republicans changed that. Every Republican voted for the deregulation. Trump signed the deregulation, and 17 Democrats joined them in that deregulation.
Yep, 17.
And guess what?
The
No more stress
Democrats
tests
supported
for the Silicon Valley Bank.
Declared that they were Republicans.
No more strict rules about how, over leveraged they
That's
are
why
or
we
how
need to
they
get
need
rid
to
of 'em.
diversify. None of that.
Yep.
And then boom, here we are. Here we are. So if they didn't sign that repeal, we very well could have avoided this catastrophe. We very well could have, because we would have known something was up. The stress test, they wouldn't have been able to survive the stress test, and then they would have had to make some serious changes.
But
But
we
no.
don't like changes because that means
The banking industry and their
anti-capitalism in our
lobbyists
eyes and costs
wanted
us
the
one extra
deregulation
penny.
because they wanted to
And that
prioritize
penny
short-term profits.
is life or death for
They
us.
got
We'd
their
rather die
deregulation,
than give
and
up
this
a
is the result.
penny.
And
Yep,
then
they need-
the son, the
Yep, God, they're
former
worse than
president's
Mr.
idiot son
Krabs.
chimes in, I blame wokeness.
We're desperate.
How
We're even
hollow
more
is this-
desperate than Mr.
is this
Krabs.
criticism now
We're
becoming?
desperate for
Exactly.
plankton to
Anything
get
they
the
don't like,
secret
they say it's woke.
formula.
Higher minimum wage, woke. Universal health care, woke. Banking regulations, woke. No
Everything
part
is
of
woke.
this is the fault of
Yep,
diversity
everything is woke according to them.
or inclusion. No part of this is the fault of the left. It was the furthest left senators who were sounding the alarm. It was Bernie Sanders. It was Elizabeth Warren who were like, this is a bad idea to deregulate. These banks might collapse. And that's exactly what happened. That's exactly what happened. It's amazing. They'll blame anything on wokeness. How hollow is this? We had a stable banking sector after New Deal regulations. It was stable. It was stable because of leftist regulations that kept the banks in check. It's so his dad is partly to blame for this because he signed the repeal of those regulations, and he's out there blaming woke people. Yeah, there's some kid on a college campus with pink hair and thick glasses who are to blame for SVB collapsing. My ass cheek, son. I can't imagine thinking like this guy, man. It's embarrassing. Like, he has no interest in actually finding the truth as to why this went under. He has no interest in it.
Because he makes us
I had to
look
read 7
bad.
freaking articles to get the real
Yep.
answer, and then he comes up, nah,
Problem.
it's wokeness. It's wokeness. It's because comedians are getting canceled. That's why the Silicon Valley Bank went under. Anyway, if you guys couldn't see the scam that is the anti-woke complex at this point, well, now you know. If all roads lead back to wokeness bad, your politics suck. They're idiotic. They're useless. And this is just a perfect example of it here. If you want to see
So
me,
yeah,
Crystal,
what do you guys say about that? Everything bad is woke. Regulate the
course.
banks to prevent bad stuff from happening. Woke. Everything liberal. Woke. When conservatives bawled about nothing, that's not woke. Even though we're Karens and deep down and all that. Alright. So yeah, we had to say about this.
Oh, jeez. Of course they'll blame everything on woke because that's all they've got. That's all they have.
And it don't work
Have
either because
nothing
they
else.
look like clowns. Yep. Alright.
Well, they get off on being looking like clowns because they're not clowns to their clown base.
Yep. So now, on to the next topic.
And that would be major Israeli protests.
Alright, so I think we covered this a little bit in the last episode, not this particular topic, but Israel. So it's a long overdue since we've really talked about Israel. So as we mentioned, I think it was 2 years ago almost since we last talked about, remember good old Benjamin Netanyahu, that neocon fuggish piece of shit prime minister they had for like the last 15 years or whatever. Well, 2 years ago, he had to step down. They brought another prime minister in. We talked about hopefully this would be a good thing, maybe finally settle the issues with Palestine and Iran. Nope. If anything, the newer prime minister might even been worse on Palestine than Bibi, which is quite wild. So ever since then, Israel has been politically in like a civil war, basically. They've had like 5 elections since 2021 for prime minister, and no one can ever get the majority power. They have to keep doing coalitions and all that. So all this time. Now, recently, I think it was earlier this year, Bibi, who, remind you, is facing corruption charges, and that was the big reason why he had to step down a few years ago, somehow became prime minister again. That's pretty bullshit. So, of course, the same standard stuff has been happening, just as always. Oppressing the Palestinians, violating Syrian and Lebanon airspace to do strikes in them, starting shit with Iran. We covered all those over the last few months or so. So, the same old crap. But now, he's decided, you know what? I'm not satisfied with being a neocon. Now I want to go full Trump and be a fascist. As recently, he's trying to pass a judicial review bill that would basically try and make the Supreme Court and stuff be more likely to be on his side to try and get rid of the corruption charges. And of course, overwhelming of Israel is against this. They even had a protest. Now, what led to a major protest recently was Bibi fired Israel's defense minister because he had the gall to criticize him about the law and recommend him scrapping it. You criticize me? You are fired.
And you're fired because you're anti-Semitic.
Triggered snowflake much. So, because of that firing, he caused a major protest throughout Israel. At one point, there was one protest, I think it was in Tel Aviv, that had 600,000 people. Now, for all of you don't know, Israel is a small country by population. I don't even think it has 10 million people. So, that many people, that could be up to like 10% of their population for crying out loud. As I'm looking up right now, Israel has 9.7 million people. So maybe we should do the math on that. That would be 600,000 out of 9.7 million. But yeah, that's a lot of people. I wouldn't be surprised if it's almost 10% or so. So yeah, that
6.1%. But then you take out how many are under the age of about 15. And yeah, it could easily jump to 10%.
So yeah, that's a huge protest and all that. And it got so bad that a whole bunch of Israel's society is considering doing general strikes. Where people straight up, like, huge parts of the economy straight up refuse to work. It got to the point where Bibi actually, for a moment, temporarily backed down on the judicial review law. Which is awesome, but it's only temporary. He's still going to try and force it through. And the funny thing is Bibi is kind of in a bad spot. Because if he tries to keep pushing this law, he could face maybe impeachment or a next election disaster, which is hopefully coming up soon. Just like hopefully the same thing happens to Erdogan, Turkey next month. So he might get voted out. But another problem is, he can't not do this reform because the only reason he's in power is because he had to do a coalition with a bunch of far-right genocidal parties in Israel. That a whole bunch of them straight up said, if you cancel this reform, we're going to drop support for you because we want to be authoritarians. He even allowed one of the main people that's a far-right party that he's in coalition with, a private army to get his support. Which should be honestly illegal. So yeah, he's kind of in a bad pickle. Bibi, maybe you should have taken the L and gone to prison for your corruption charges instead of trying to be an authoritarian goon. So yeah, what do you guys say about this? That's happened in Israel the last 2 years.
Not really a surprise coming from Bibi, but then you got some of those that are even worse.
So yeah, to anyone that's watching from Israel, please get your far-right parties out of here. And stop oppressing the Palestinians. Stop violating Syrian and Lebanon's airspace. Stop trying to start shit with Iran. And maybe, just maybe, you actually will be the base country in the Middle East that the right always keeps talking about how awesome they are. they treat gay rights correctly, so you can't ever criticize them when they genocide the Palestinians. Remember those good old arguments years ago?
Yep.
Oh my god. And even that you're not even good on, because the far-right Orthodox Jews in Israel hate gays just as much as they hate Muslims. So I don't want to hear it either on that one. So yeah, Israel, fix your shit and get rid of Bibi. And take out the right wing too. Only liberals and progressives in power. Do you understand me? Alright.
Yes, exactly.
So now, with that out of the way, what's the next topic?
Democracy defeats fascism in Wisconsin.
Not only that, Chicago's mayor too.
Yes.
So anyways, there were some elections recently this last week. One of them was in Chicago for their new mayor, and the mayor is won by an awesome progressive who got rid of a corrupt corporate Democrat. So a massive W there, because Chicago has been strife with neoliberal Democrats for decades now. Oh man. No wonder they've been a shithole as Chirac lately because of it. Now, in Wisconsin recently, they had their own primaries, and the big one was their Supreme Court, which finally went back to being progressive on the Supreme Court, which is neat because if I'm correct, as I'm going to look it up right now, because a lot of this is because abortion, Wisconsin's one of those states where, abortion is not even legally clear if it's legal or illegal, so therefore, no one can get abortion in Wisconsin because no one wants to take the chance.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we need a Supreme Court to be liberal in Wisconsin so they can finally regulate that, yes, abortion is legal, so shut the fuck up and deal with it. So, yeah, very important, and the right is having a giant meltdown over it. Charlie Kirk and I have been raging violently like crazy because of this too.
Yep.
Honestly, I think I've seen him rage more about this than Trump being indictment, which is quite insane. So yeah, let's watch Kyle enjoy the conservative tears.
Pretty big wins for the left yesterday. There were a few elections. There was one in Wisconsin about the Supreme Court, which cut in the direction of the left. We'll get to that in just a little bit. But first, let's talk about the Chicago mayor race. Now, this guy who ended up winning is a former teacher, union leader, genuinely seems like a good dude. And one of the things that makes this so positive is that there's video of Lori Lightfoot
I'm just totally lost.
And basically the Democratic political establishment sort of mocking him and acting like, this guy
there we
will
go,
never
we're back.
win.
Sort of.
Very similar feel to how the Democratic establishment
won the election
Bernie
by
Sanders, for
the
example.
mayor of Chicago won by just 1,100 votes.
Came in and he ended up winning. So
very
this
close.
Is just one tweet here. Dave Wasserman has called it by now, but he says, there it is with 484,829 votes counted in Chicago. Brandon Johnson takes the lead over Paul Vallis by 1,111 votes. So that's 50.11% to 49.89%. And he said this was before he called it, but he said you wouldn't want to call it without seeing at least some mail, but it's virtually done. Well, he went on to say, no, it is done. So massive, massive victory. To put this in perspective for everybody, you really had a classic, like, good guy versus bad guy narrative in this mayor's race, because this guy, Paul Vallis, is like the epitome of the neoliberal privatizer. Like, he has a long career, a long history of getting involved, particularly with school districts, you know, coming in to fix them and make them better. He did it in New Orleans, for example, after Katrina. And he made everything way worse. He gutted the unions, you know, hurt the workers, was a privatizer, massive neoliberal. He represents
a Republican,
the
basically.
Absolute worst of politics.
Which is not
in
good.
country. And again, the other guy, union leader, teacher, decent dude. So let me show you. We got this great video here from More Perfect Union, and they'll walk through their records, and you'll get an understanding as to why this was so important.
System in the 1990s. We met up with him and Greg Kelly, another longtime union organizer, to understand the lasting impact of Paul Vallis's legacy in Chicago.
He was the actual architect of, we call it slash.
Vallis was the first chief executive officer for the Chicago Public Schools. Note the name, chief executive officer, and not school superintendent. And so he came in as a CEO would, very focused on the money aspect of the system without really fully understanding the impact of decisions that he was making.
Vallis became CEO of Chicago Public
Okay, I have
Schools in
completely
1995
lost sound
and immediately got to
on
work
your
enacting his
end, Ben.
privatization agenda. He skimmed money
Oh,
from
there we
teachers'
go.
pensions, took out
I
high-interest
briefly heard you
loans
then.
that ultimately
The
cost the city
problem is if it's
$1.5
too loud,
billion,
it'll echo
and
on the
he
mic,
privatized school
remember?
services like custodial
Yeah, I
staff,
know, but there was a
slashing
lot of it
wages
that
and
I
benefits for
couldn't
thousands
hear.
of workers.
Suddenly, I just lost everything.
I proudly present this award to Mr. Paul Vallis, and I want to read what it says. This award
And it's back. I
is to
can't hear it
certify
again.
that Paul Vallis of the Chicago Board of Education is truly this year's Hypocrite of the Year.
What were some of the psychological effects on the workers from these privatization plans?
Well, hopelessness, number one. Wondering how they were going to survive off of $7.65 an hour. There were some employees who I personally represented who lost their homes, lost their marriages, could not afford to put their children through college as they were doing when they were regular employees of the system.
When you take thousands of workers, right, mostly black workers, and you cut their wages, you are really impacting the neighborhoods and communities in which they live in. Places that have historically been strong places for black middle class workers, they can no longer afford to live in them. And so they leave, and I honestly believe the decisions that Vallis made created the conditions
And this is
for
a
what
good
we see
representation
today.
of systemic
Depopulation,
racism.
rising crime,
Yep.
lack of investment.
For workers like Greg and Leonard, who experienced the impacts of Vallis's approach firsthand, the threat of a deeper crisis if he's elected mayor is real.
To me, the worst part about Paul Vallis isn't even his ideology, it's his inability to understand that his policies impact people.
After Chicago,
Because
Paul
they
Vallis
don't
went on to run
care.
school systems in Philadelphia
Yep.
and Bridgeport, but he might be best known for what he did to the public schools in New Orleans.
Given the fact that this district is much smaller, I'm confident that we can transform this system.
Vallis is often credited with fixing New Orleans schools after Katrina, but people on the ground tell a different story.
And it was like someone was trying to create a disaster.
That's Ashana Begard. In 2007, when Vallis took over as head of the school system in New Orleans, Ashana was an education advocate and a public school parent.
They fired all of our educators, teachers, cafeteria workers. 7,500 people were fired when the city was still kind of underwater and we weren't allowed back. That's when we started to learn that Paul Vallis was coming and who he was and that he had done this before.
We've really worked to develop a set of rules that take the wind out of the sail of those out there who say we need a contract, we need an ironclad contract with the Recovery School District to protect our members.
I believe he was sent to decentralize our union, like to decimate them, which firing the teachers did destroy the union, but Paul Vallis made sure that they didn't come back together.
If you set the bar high, the higher you set it, the higher the children are going to perform.
Vallis instituted strict zero-tolerance policies that punished students for low-level offenses, criminalized poverty, and led to an alarming rate of expulsions and suspensions.
This is the opposite of how you deal with children with trauma. They've lost family members and friends and their neighborhoods have been decimated. You're gonna punish children for not having money. And I remember them pulling jackets off of like first graders and kindergartens because it wasn't the school's jacket. The school's jacket was $60. And then you had children, if they wore the wrong color belt, will be suspended for 2 days. Just horrific, inhumane things.
What do you think Chicago voters need to know about Paul Vallis ahead of this election?
He is gonna put his friends and them making money off the well-being of your entire city. I need you to know that.
In this race, Vallis has aligned himself with far-right interests and billionaires, including Republican megadonor Ken Griffin. Vallis also spoke at a fundraiser for Awake Illinois, which pushes homophobic and transphobic policies. For people like Greg Kelly, this last point is key to understanding the choice that voters will face in this election.
My mom always told me you can learn a lot about people by who they hang out with, who their friends are, and just looking at Paul Vallis's friends lets me know that he hasn't changed.
For decades, Chicago has been run by people who represent the corporate elite. But this moment could offer a real break with that past.
Well, thank you and good afternoon. As the next mayor of the city of Chicago,
We asked both candidates to sit down with us to tell us what they plan to do for working people. Vallis did not respond, so we sat down with Brandon Johnson after an event on housing policy at Harmony Community Church.
Paul Vallis has never seen a dollar that he wasn't willing to spend 3 times. There's a clear contrast between his view of the world, of privatization, running budgets into the ground, versus someone like me who comes from the working class where we can't afford to play around with our budgets like that, right? If anything goes wrong in a working class family, and I can tell you because I grew up in one, there's 10 of us with 1 bathroom. My father was a public employee, worked hard, had a couple other jobs just to make the ends meet. Nothing could go wrong.
Brandon Johnson was a public school teacher in Chicago. and later became an organizer with the Chicago Teachers Union, where he protested school closings and fought for an elected school board. In 2018, Johnson was first elected Cook County Commissioner.
Teaching at Jenner Academy really shifted my politics.
Yep.
Yeah. Because there were students who showed up every single day, even when the city wouldn't show up for them. And you need a mayor who's willing to show up for you every single day. Because it is a matter of life and death, you all.
That's right.
It is a matter of life and death. No matter where you live in the city, you get to have what you deserve. And what our people deserve is real economic justice. The safest cities in America all have one thing in common: they invest in people.
We are in a position now where we can literally repair the damage that he caused in the 90s, while also building towards a better, stronger city that is built off of the ideas and the hopes of working people.
Ultimately, voters want to know who has a track record of standing with working people, and who is willing to fight for them once in office.
The voices of working people will no longer be ignored, and the interests of those who have tried to separate us and divide us, we are going to dismantle and disrupt that structure and usher in something beautiful, something dynamic, and something that's full of love. My name is Brandon Johnson. On April 4th, you all know we all approve these things.
So, by the way, apparently up to, I think it was 1,000 cops were like, if this guy, Brandon Johnson, wins, then we're quitting. Which is kind of astonishing if you think about it. I mean, you want to talk about election interference, right? Like, this is your job. This is your job. And if the wrong person, according to you, wins the election, you're going to revolt, you're going to throw a tantrum like a little baby. I mean, this isn't even over any specific issue. They're just like, man, we don't like this guy. Well,
exactly.
As many people were saying on Twitter, let's go Brandon. And it turns out Brandon Johnson won. Definitely a positive result. And then the other positive result, guys, the Wisconsin Supreme Court
Wisconsin
put
one
to
now,
a liberal
finally.
majority.
Mm-hmm.
And so here's what happened. It was a conservative majority. And this court was super duper yikesy. Here's why. It is the only state Supreme Court in the country that actually entertained any of Donald Trump's bogus, stop the steal, rigged election cases. And the only reason we didn't have a full-on constitutional crisis brought about by that right-wing majority is that only one of the conservative justices said, yeah, I'm going to reject Trump's case, but I'm not rejecting it on the merits or the substance. I'm only rejecting it on procedural grounds. Whereas the other three conservative justices were like, yeah, let's hear the case. And let's basically overturn and give Trump a W. And so very, very extremist court. So now the liberals took the majority. By the way, this is a huge, huge victory for the pro-choice side because now you're going to have Wisconsin be less aggressively anti-abortion. And this is voters clearly speaking out on that front and clearly siding with the pro-choice side in a similar way to Kansas. Remember in Kansas, they had a direct vote on the issue of abortion rights. And Kansas is deep red, and they voted for abortion rights.
And we covered that, remember?
Another big deal.
Yep.
And the other thing is,
I remember
they're going
that.
to redraw the congressional maps now. And there's only the slimmest majority for Republicans in Wisconsin. And they can redraw those maps and make it much more likely that, Democrats do better, which, of course, is going to impact the House of Representatives. So, I mean, look, it's a big deal. And, people are pointing out, if this is a sign of things to come, then looks like we may have hit a tipping point. People are fed up. And it's a total backlash against the Republicans. But more importantly, and this is really highlighted in the Brandon Johnson race, there's also a total rebuke of corporate Democrats, the corrupt, business-as-usual establishment Democrats.
Yep.
And by the way, if the case went the other way, we all know what would have happened. If it went to Paul Vallis in Chicago, they would have been like, the massive rebuke of the left. So unpopular. And this is a massive rebuke of rising crime. Left doesn't have the answers. They'd build a narrative around it. And now that the lefty won, it's going to be crickets. Nobody's going to build a narrative in mainstream media. They're going to act like it's a fluke that he won. Well, I mean, go ahead and grapple with the fact that the liberals won on the Wisconsin Supreme Court and the more left candidate won in the Chicago mayor's race. they're not even going to grapple with it, though. Like I'm saying, grapple with it. They're not even going to mention it. They're just going to, gloss over it and not draw any major conclusions from it, even though perhaps they should. So there you have it. 2 big wins for the left.
Yep. Awesome.
Soak it in, man.
Oh, yes.
Soak it in, because you guys know.
Because not only for abortion rights in Wisconsin, but to prevent Republicans from trying to steal the elections as always.
And it feels good. If you want to see
so yeah, what do you guys say about that one?
Woo, double win.
Yep, and conservatives can keep mauling. All right, so now for the next topic.
As they do 24/7. All right, next will be the school shooting in Tennessee. Isn't that to push genocide?
So yeah, there was another school shooting that happened in Tennessee after we did the last episode, as 6 people were killed. And what makes this a little bit more interesting, and of course the right is obsessed over this, is the shooter was trans. And now, of course, what the right does not want to point out, because it goes against their agenda, is that the vast majority of shooters are cis. So they're trying to act like this is like some epidemic that
they're literally trying to be like this one single transgender person shooting. It means every single transgender person is a mass shooter.
Yep,
and that is why they must be genocided. That's exactly what Matt Walsh and all the others believe.
Yep, and also, and of course, supposedly it's a Christian school, so now they're all acting like, oh, this is persecution against Christians, which a bunch of monster truck people that involved in also that argument too. We still have no idea what the reason is for it, so how about you don't assume that's the case, even though we know deep down you want it to be the case because you have a major persecution complex. So how about you be a reasonable person and just wait and see what the reason was, instead of just automatically assuming that's what it is. Alright, so now let's see Vosh's video on it.
You know why I'm making this video, I assume. There was a shooting recently. An individual named Audrey Hale went to a Christian school.
By the way, have you ever heard the channel Police Activity?
No.
It's a channel that covers like body cam footage and stuff of like police doing stuff. They actually posted a video of them taking down the shooter. I actually saw it too.
School and slaughtered several people with firearms, including 3 children. It's an act that I have not seen anybody defending online. I certainly don't. Nobody watching this video will defend it. So
there'll be idiots on Tumblr that will.
That issue settled.
There's always going to be people that defend stuff, no matter how stupid. Always remember that.
This shooting.
Yep.
Audrey, despite being initially identified as a female, apparently goes by he/him pronouns. So, a trans man, then, presumably. And as you might expect, given the current media environment surrounding transgender people, specifically from the right wing, this has taken off. Now, obviously, a shooting from a transgender individual is a pretty noteworthy event in this environment, in large part because they're so rare. This graph is from Soaked on Left. You can thank him for it. These are mass shootings by gender status.
Yeah, mass shootings by gender status for the last 5 years. 2,826 of them cis, 3 trans. So in the last 5 years, 3 trans individuals caused mass shootings. 2,826 of them are cis. So, when you go by this math, conservatives, that means you actually should be afraid of cis people then, because they're the vast majority of shooters. But of course, you're not going to do that.
That's the term he uses.
Because they're pushing for genocide.
23, and here we have always very proportional 2,826 cisgender attributed mass shootings to transgender people's 3. Really underperforming there. See, if transgender people committed mass shootings at a rate proportional to their representation in the population, you would expect something a little bit closer to 1 in every 100 shootings being from a transgender person. In fact, we're seeing more like 1 out of every 1,000. Of course, you might be wondering, why am I immediately talking about the relative rarity of transgender people committing mass shootings? And that is, of course, because the right wing has exploded with this. They have taken off. In an effort to keep the hate train against transgender people rolling, they are talking about the mass disarmament of trans people. They are talking about gender...
Which, by the way, Benny Boy, funny enough, actually did advocate not giving guns to trans individuals.
Yep.
So, all these, Second Amendment fuckers that are obsessed with guns, now all of a sudden, they don't think people should have guns.
Remember the last time that happened with the Black Panthers?
I was actually going to bring that up. Just like... Yeah,
maybe we shouldn't be giving N slurs one either.
Yep, because that's the reality, guys. Conservatives don't want people they don't like, minorities, trans, guns, because they want them to be disarmed, so when they get power, they want to get away with oppressing them and killing them. And that's the good way to do it, to make sure they're not armed.
Ideology having directly led to these attacks. They are talking about transgender people being innately dangerous. They are using it in essentially the same way that you saw conservatives use anything bad done by Muslim people after 9/11 to denounce, to attack, to castigate the entire group. This isn't new. The disproportionate fixation of a minority's wrongdoings in order to justify hatred against them is a long-standing propaganda tactic. It goes back before mass media. If you want to use an example from a relatively, a rarely cited historical group, well, we could say that the Nazis did, in fact, use any wrongdoing from any Jewish citizen of Germany, perceived or real, in order to justify the laws that were made against them, the crimes committed against them. Der Stürmer, was constantly putting out articles on how this thing has been done by a Jew and this thing is done by a Jew. Germany back in the 1930s was a big country. The United States today has 330 million people. If you wanted to fill a newspaper with stories of transgender people doing bad things, you could, but you'd have to fill 1,000 more with the bad things cisgender people have done. We have seen mass shooting after mass shooting after mass shooting being done by obviously cisgender people. I mean, how many times in all of the stories surrounding these 2,826 shootings have you even seen the term cisgender brought up?
Yeah, because no one brings up because everyone assumes it's just normal.
Yeah.
That's the actual group that disproportionately commits violence, by the way. Overwhelmingly so. It's men. And at every point, the right wing has been resistant. No, it is about mental illness. It's about lone wolf shooters. It's about...
Yet when Democrats bring up funding for mental health, you guys always vote against it.
About this, that, the other.
Because you're full of shit when you say that.
One school shooting.
Because you want to do nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the entire
and that's why
group
you are evil.
Who are violent, who are deranged. I have seen a tide of right-wing hate today in the past 24 hours, and a lot of it is directed against the idea of transgender people enthusiastically arming themselves for the purposes of our constitutionally protected right to self-defense. The Second Amendment, of value, a legal basis so often, at least nominally cherished by the right wing, has been completely abandoned. And seemingly, the mere capacity for any transgender individual to commit a crime is sufficient to question the right for the entire group to arm themselves. I've even seen people direct this specifically to me. I've always been a fervent advocate for the right to arm yourself in self-defense. I've always said that the right is violent, is at the moment genocidal against trans people. They have explicitly said that they want to eradicate trans people, though they euphemize it by saying transgenderism in a manner akin to the way in which Nazis have long talked about Jewish Bolshevism, Judaism, or whatever else, as a way of making clear their points without directly targeting the individual in a way that might set them a flag of any variety of laws when it comes to planning to commit terror. And given that environment, the idea of transgender people arming themselves to potentially defend against any stochastic terrorism for the right, it's a principle I've always defended. It is a principle that I continue to defend. Look at social media right now. An entire political party is using the incredibly disproportionately rare mass shooting of a single member of the transgender community to attack
and
all
people like
trans
Matt Walsh
people.
are being like,
and they are doing so.
This is why every single T slur is going to massacre every single Christian on the planet if we don't genocide them.
Funny enough, Vosh's video thumbnail of this was literally a Matt Walsh tweet. Him saying that pretty much.
Exactly the same way that reactionary movements have historically done when it comes to depriving a minority group of their rights. If a single crime is committed by any one of them, if a single Jewish person gets too feisty at a bar and starts a fight, does one murder, oh, sure, lock them up for murder, fine, but no, it's never enough. It always has to be directed against the group. This, they say, is why this entire group is a threat to us, to our way of living. I believe Matt Walsh literally said, he can't make it more explicit if he tried. He doesn't want to. He doesn't want to be subtle. I believe he said, in all my life, I have never seen as great of an evil as transgenderism or something. As though it is the existence of trans people or the imagined ideology of which permits their existence in their mind that led to this. As though there's something in transgender validation or acknowledging their existence, providing them healthcare and civil rights that entails an implicit defense of school shootings. Something which, again, I must keenly remind you, have been predominantly the domain of white men for a long, long time, and still is. If you want to go by explicit ideologies, overwhelmingly, when we look at political killings done by members of an extremist political group, we see an enormously disproportionate representation from the far right, then jihadists, who are, again, far right. It's basically the same ideology, except with Islam instead of Christianity. And then you have the incel ideology,
which is also
then you
right
have
wing.
black separatists, and then you have the far left wing. Down there, radically underperforming, as trans people do in their...
There was actually studies that even I think the FBI and CIA have done studies on this, that they showed like the vast majority of violence and terrorist attacks done in America is because of far right groups in America. And Republicans got so violently triggered by it that they demanded them to not mention that. Censorship much.
Yes, I remember that.
I hope the average American is capable of understanding that this delusional, hysterical redirection of anger towards trans people based on a single data point from an otherwise massively disproportionately small representation in school shootings or mass shootings, I hope the average American looks at this and goes, wow, the far right sure is absolutely hysterical. They are insane. They are obsessive. They will take any excuse they can. A transgender person gets into a car accident, transgender ideology creating the most dangerous roadways America's ever seen. Transgender person throws a fit at a restaurant because they got the wrong order. Transgender people are ruined.
Literally everything involving trans means they're bad. That's how it all is.
As long as we exist in a country where one half of our political body is intent on the complete eradication of a social group, they will take any excuse and opportunity they can to bring that about. And again, not to lay it on too thick with the historical parallels, but yeah, this is exactly what the Nazis did. It's never enough just to create the propaganda, to tell the story. You have to elevate, and you have to over-report on every excuse you're given to denounce a group. It doesn't matter what their proportional representation is. It doesn't matter whether it was likely or to happen. It doesn't matter what caused it. You just look at any story you can take and you throw it out there. I guarantee you, there will be more coverage of this shooting than there was of the Q Club shooting, even though that was a far right.
Yeah, and here's something a lot of you on the right need
to
realize.
It'll be more coverage of it than there has been any coverage of mass shootings in the last 5 years.
Yeah, and here's something the right needs to also realize. Since you keep bringing up, trans are violent and stuff like that. The trans community are facing genocide in this country because of you fucking idiots. Do you remember the shooting that happened in Colorado last November?
Yeah.
That was an actual far-right dipshit who explicitly killed people in the LGBT community because they were LGBT. Unlike what we know right now about this shooting. You guys do way more of this than the other way around. You guys are just violent thugs. Deal with it.
Yep.
There's nothing wrong with being trans, so get over it.
Fascist who shot up and killed queer people at a club, explicitly and unambiguously motivated by far-right ideology. But no, there will be more coverage of this than that, because the far right will be talking about this forever. You'll be hearing about this year,
and
next year,
and they need
year
to be
after
told
that.
to shut the
you know,
fuck
if
up.
this was such a frequent event, I bet they'd have more examples to pull from. It's why you keep seeing the in the conservative thumbnails that one crying lady who's upset that Donald Trump won back in 2016. You've been seeing that lady for like 7 years now, because I mean that's all they have. Those are the examples they pull from, scarce as they are. I found the tweet from Matt Walsh. I came to the conclusion years ago that the trans movement is the greatest evil our country faces. I
No,
only
that's
become
you,
more and more
Walsh,
sure of this
thuggish
fact with
Nazi
each passing
piece of
day,
shit.
and more determined to oppose it until my last breath. Did he say this when it was cisgender people shooting, white people shooting, conservatives shooting, men shooting?
No,
straight
because he
people
agrees
shooting?
with them.
No.
Yeah.
And we know why. In this media environment, I think we can interpret this behavior from the far right as a reaffirmation of their intent to eradicate trans people as a social group. And I fully support their right to exercise their Second Amendment privileges to own firearms in case they are ever attacked, and to defend themselves within the grounds of the law.
Don't like guns, and there
Anybody who
needs to be some
disagrees
severe
with that
gun control,
is
especially after what happened recently.
literally
but yes,
giving-
if you want a gun, you should be able. And if you want a gun and you meet all the safety requirements and all that stuff that any reasonable gun control legislation has, then yeah, you should get one. And always support self-defense.
The exact same justification Hitler gave to disarm the Jews, and I'm not exaggerating when I say that. Anybody who plays along with that rhetoric, the idea, oh, well, by advocating self-defense, you're actually responsible for every bad thing a member of a group does. No. Apparently the shooter
That
had
sounds
a
like the same
manifesto.
stupid
I don't
argument
think it's
idiots
released
on the
yet.
left use for arming Ukraine to defend themselves.
I don't know what it says. It could be anything from a deranged scrawl of personal misgivings to that particular school. It could be nonsense. It could be some kind of political screed. I don't know. I'm sure it'll be deranged. Normal people don't shoot up schools and kill children. So whatever it ends up saying, it has no effect on anything that I've said in this video. The worst case scenario from an optical perspective would be that the manifesto is some deranged screed on how the only way to defend trans people against conservative aggression is to kill school children. If this person says that in their manifesto, he's dead now, that's deranged. It does not take away from
Wrong
the
and
necessity
bigoted
to make
too
appropriate
against Christians.
Exactly, yeah.
Because then all Christians are anti-LGBT rights. Hell, probably the majority now of Christians in America are pro-gay rights and stuff. It's just the fringes that aren't.
Up against conservative aggression.
Exactly.
No, you're not responsible for every single unhinged direction a person takes otherwise legitimate advice. All the same, right now the ultimate victims are the families of those who were killed at the school. So, I wish them all the best in the world. I sincerely hope that their lives are not further tormented by the deranged attention brought to them by the far right, because they will no doubt be made to be martyrs and voices for what they want to be an anti-trans hit piece. So hopefully they find peace soon. To all trans people, look at the media, see what they're saying about you. Look at the far right, see what they want to do to you. I think it speaks for itself. And to the far right, a lot of you are just sick people. But if you actually do care about, stopping mass shootings, I have no idea why you think transgender people are the problem. The fact that you all jump on that the moment you're given the opportunity means that you are either fully aware of the fact that you are political hacks who are weaponizing an incident that has nothing to do with trans people against
Well, we
the
know they
minority
do.
group you hate.
Yeah.
Or you could maybe just be like,
Piece of shit.
Yep,
So,
exactly.
Now, before we wrap this part up, I have to also mention this because it just happened recently, too. So, there's been protests lately that happened in Tennessee where it's happened, where a couple times there have actually been protests at the, Nashville's, Capitol, basically, over this. And conservatives there got so triggered that a whole bunch of a couple of Democrats were involved in the protest to make them look bad because they are bad. That 2 of them got expelled.
Yep, I remember that.
So guys,
I read about that.
So yeah, I've seen people in the server too acting like they invaded the building and all that. No, they did not. This is not some January 6th crap. They just went there and protested and made the fucking idiot Republicans look like fools. This is not the same as January 6th. They weren't denying an election and they didn't get violent and no one died for it. They just went there and made them look bad, which, by the way, is legal and in this case needed because conservatives in this case are fucking fascist retards that need to go. And not only that, they actually prove that they're fascists by kicking out these Democrats too. Which, by the way, if anything, every one of them that voted for this, they should get impeached for it. How about that one? All you fascist fucks need to get out. And honestly, better off just dying. Can't stand these fuckers. So yeah, we gotta see about all this. The shooting, the anti-trans hysteria, the expulsion of based progressives, and all that.
Yep. Again, fascist plot. Fascist plot to kill everyone.
Yep. There's no. How many times we gotta get this into your how many times do we have to teach this lesson, old man conservatives?
Oh, man,
There's nothing wrong with being gay or trans or all that. So shut up and get over it already. They're not going after kids. They're not pedos or whatever stupid argument you make of. Just shut up, go away, or bury it. If you're not going to do it, then just die. Along with Pootler.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yep. So yeah. Now, on to the next topic.
Speaking of Putler.
Oh, what's this?
Finland joins NATO as Putler mold.
Did Putler get mad recently? So yeah, just recently a few days ago, Finland has officially joined NATO. The first expansion in 3 years. Sweden hasn't joined yet because Turkey is being a fucking whiny cunt about them not being against the Kurds like they are, so they're held up at the moment. But Finland, after all these decades of being neutral, has finally ended recently. And that is not good for Russia because Finland basically doubled the border that Russia has to protect themselves from NATO expansion and attacks, which, since, they believe that NATO's going to attack and all that, which we know is full of shit and all that. And of course, if Russia did do anything to Finland, honestly, Finland wouldn't even really need NATO. We all remember the Winter War.
Yes.
So for all of you who don't know the Winter War, that was during the early part of World War II when the Soviet Union invaded Finland, and even though a few months later in the end they did win and took territory from them, it was honestly even more bloodier than even the Russo-Ukraine war right now. Finland had 70,000 casualties. The Soviet Union, I looked this up earlier today when I found out this, they had almost 400,000 casualties. So 5 times the casualties just for a little bit of territory. So, yeah, never mess with a Finn, because they will clobber you very badly if you mess with them. They'll clobber you as badly as I clobber France playing as Italy in Vicky 2 when they invade me in the mountains. So yeah, Finland would probably beat the shit out of them easily, especially since I found out, because I don't know if I mentioned this before when we last talked about the Russo-Ukraine war, at least up to 97% of Russia's active combat stuff is in Ukraine right now. So almost all their fighting military is in there, and they're still not winning. So if you can't even beat Ukraine, who is weaker easily than Finland, you're not going to stand any chance against Finland whatsoever. And the funny thing is, I don't even know if they even have enough troops to defend the Finnish border, since all their stuff's in Ukraine. And I don't think they're... if they're smart, they could take out stuff from Ukraine, since, if anything, they have too many troops there, and with logistic problems, they just send it over to Finland to protect themselves. But I don't think they're going to do that, especially since they're too stupid. So yeah, Pootler is having a Malden meltdown over it. Russia's having a massive meltdown over this. But, guys, here's the thing. It's their fault. Now, I don't know about you, but personally, I still am not even really on board with Finland joining NATO. I like them to stay neutral. Same goes for Sweden and Ukraine and all them. But, guys, here's the reality of the situation. Finland was neutral since World War II. Sweden has been neutral since 1812. 200 years of neutrality Sweden has. And Ukraine was neutral right after the Cold War ended and they broke away from the Soviet Union, to the point where even polls back in 2011 showed they overwhelmingly hated NATO, just like Russia. They believed all the same stuff about NATO as being American empire and all that crap. But, you know what changed? Russia invaded Ukraine twice. When that happened, now Ukraine overwhelmingly wants to join NATO. And Finland and Sweden, they also now overwhelmingly wanted to join NATO, even when they never wanted to. When you do something that aggressive, you make people instantly change their minds on stuff. So yeah, Russia, you have no one to blame but Putin for NATO expansion. Because the three countries on your board, well, two, since Sweden isn't, but the two countries on your board have been neutral for decades. You made them become not neutral because they don't trust you, and they have rightful reasons to do so. Because remember, guys, Russia wants to bring back the Russian Empire. Do you know who was part of the Russian Empire? It wasn't just Ukraine. It was Finland, too. They were also part of the Russian Empire. So, and that's why the Soviet Union attacked them in World War II, to try and take them back over. So, there is a history of these two getting violated, and they're going to make sure that they are defended against if they are attacked. Although in Finland's case, I don't honestly think they need it. I think they could easily crush Russia if they fought them whatsoever on their own. So, yeah. It's Putler's fault that NATO expanded. And this also shows that probably overall, even though we thought NATO expansion was the reason why this happened, this whole war, it might not have been the case. Because if it really was the case, this war is all about just stopping NATO expansion, well, guess what? The exact opposite happened.
Completely backfired,
So that makes you think about enough that maybe, just maybe, it wasn't about NATO expansion. He didn't want NATO to expand because it would make it harder for him to take back areas that he wants, like the Baltic and all them, because they're in NATO. So if they did anything to them, they're going to have to deal with America and all them. And I think they know deep down that they're not going to be able to beat America in all of Europe. They can't even beat Ukraine. If they can't even beat them, there's no way they're going to beat like 30 countries in Europe and America. Like, it's just not happen. You're going to get obliterated.
Yeah. So, and don't forget there was don't forget that he's trying to move he's going to move nuclear weapons into Belarus,
even though it won't be there till like July and all that, and had that stupid referendum last year that we know was bullshit and all that.
Yeah.
And didn't even bother bringing it up because I didn't think it was really irrelevant. Like, it's no different than America having nuclear weapons in Italy, Germany, Netherlands, Turkey, and all that. It's not going to change it's not going to be like, now Ukraine's an even bigger threat. It would not make any difference if they were in Russia, Belarus, or anything like that. It's not going to change anything. It's more like just a political posturing, basically. So that's why I didn't even bother bringing it up. So yeah, what do you got? Oh yeah. Oh man, all the idiot leftists too on Twitter were mauled very badly about this. How like Finland has now put themselves in direct line of nuclear holocaust and stuff like that, and that that they're falling apart and because join NATO and all that, and all the really silly crap.
Thinking like the Nazi American terrorist organization just invaded and annexed Finland into their Nazi terrorist state.
Yep. NATO invaded them, just like they're about to invade Sweden next, guys. And make them the next one. So yeah. So what do you guys say about this? Finland joining NATO and all this stuff.
Wow. Good work.
Because I'm sure, just like you probably would have rather them stay neutral too and NATO didn't expand. But of course. Thanks
to Putler.
Yep, thanks to Putler.
That's what happened.
Yep. Maybe next time, don't invade countries and all that. Maybe. See, Russia, if you were just a base social democracy like Scandinavia, after the Soviet Union collapsed, maybe, just maybe, not only will you maybe be a superpower again because you would actually be economically thriving, maybe people would trust you enough and maybe they would want to be with you over the West in America. But no, you just can't accept the fact that Cold War's over, you lost, you have to accept the reality that you're no longer a great power like the British have to, and you just can't let it go. So, deal with it. And, Putler, please die already. So yeah, on to the next topic.
That will be the final one. Trump has been officially indicted.
Okay, so this one I don't even think it's going to be really that big of a deal though, but after all these years and years and years of talking about it, Trump actually got indicted recently. And over what, you're probably asking? His corruption, not corruption charges, but his bribing of Stormy Daniels, and not talk about his affair and all that. Honestly, this is like the least important thing that he's done that deserves indictment. January 6th honestly should deserve a lot more, but you can get him, get him on what you can and all that.
Yeah.
So he's indicted, and who knows what's gonna happen since it did just happen. Honestly, though, I don't think it's going to change anything. They're probably going to go very lenient on him since he's a rich man and all that. And I wouldn't be surprised if he tries to bribe his way out of it. I bet he'll be treated just like Dinesh D'Souza was when his corruption thing happened years ago. And I wouldn't be surprised if he got out of the way if it somehow still tried to run. That's why I didn't really even think this is even really that worthy of a topic to discuss, because I don't think anything's going to happen. So what do you think?
Yeah.
But he did deserve it, though.
Yes.
Too much the conservatives mauled, so eat shit if you don't like hearing it.
I think it was I think it was worth it just to see conservatives mauled.
That is true. Watching conservatives mauled has been very funny.
Yes, I've loved it.
I think even Kirk Boy actually started advocating violence because of it too.
Yep. Yep.
No surprise. Charlie Kirk getting
that mask continues to slip
fascism
off.
out.
Yep. Come on. We already know you're a fascist. Let's just finish ripping that mask off already, Kirk and everyone.
Yep. And then you could face severe consequences too for being that. So yeah, he's indicted. I don't think anything's gonna happen with it though. Like, what about you? Like, do you think he's gonna be like in jail forever and prevent from running again?
Unlikely.
Yeah, and for all of you who don't know, I don't know if it was for president, but it has happened in American history before where I think it was someone in Congress actually did run for re-election while in prison, and they actually won. And it happened I think it happened all the way back in the 1800s. So, even if Trump did go to jail, that does not mean he wouldn't be able to run in 2024. And since right now, I honestly just mentioned right now, just remembered it, but DeSantis right now, Trump's biggest rival, is actually tanked a lot in the polls recently, if you didn't know.
Yeah, he has.
So looking like right now, Trump actually is indeed the favorite right now, since DeSantis is the only one I think that can actually challenge him.
Yeah.
So
I think the big danger there with DeSantis is not 2024, it's 2028.
Yeah, so
because I think my brother reckons that Ron DeSantis is only running in 2024 to gauge how much support he has.
Well, of course, he hasn't even officially announced his run yet.
Yeah, I know. Well, we know, but Trump's basically Trump's basically campaigning like DeSantis is running.
Yep, and he has been going after him hard and making a fool of both of themselves.
Yes.
So yeah. So even if he does go to jail or whatever, that does not mean that he's not going to run 2024. There is a precedent that people run even when they are in jail and winning, so anything can happen. Although I'm sure if he was in prison, I think that would really hurt his support just as much as January 6th. So it might still make it more likely Biden would win if both of them ran against each other next year. So if he hypothetically, if he did go to jail, oh my God, all the Trumpsters and even some people on the left actually act like Trump being indicted actually is going to make him even more likely to win 2024, which I think is crazy. What about you?
No. I've seen a couple of them where it'd be it won't hurt him, but it won't help him.
Yeah,
because he's got that core of his base. Like a few of the ones who aren't total Trump tards would probably walk away, but I don't think he'd really change for much.
Yeah. Shit, what was I gonna say? Don't think it definitely is not gonna help him. That's for damn sure. Like, how the heck can anyone seriously think this is gonna help him? He's in prison, possibly. How would that help anyone running for president? The only thing, though, it possibly could be maybe bad for the Democrats if possibly DeSantis runs and Trump not being able to run if he's in prison would make it easier for him. Because that's what we said several months now. We think DeSantis is probably the better bet to beat Biden or whoever Democrat runs in 2024. But that's going to come down to, will Trump, if he loses the primary, will he accept the loss or not try and fuck over DeSantis? Because I think if Trump lost the primary against DeSantis, I think he will fuck him over, like do a third party run and help the Democrats win. But if he's in prison, he might not be able to run at all, so that would help DeSantis. I guess in the end, we're just going to have to wait and see. But, hey, he's indicted, he deserved it, and now we'll see what sort of consequences he will probably not face, because rich fucks like him always get away with this stuff pretty much.
Yeah.
All right. So, surprisingly, 8 topics, more than usual, yet we finished pretty quickly, too. Quite surprising.
Yeah.
Nice to see about that. And, guys, we got so many topics already lined up for episode 74. Can't wait to do that. So, see you guys next time for episode 74.
Yep.